Hello, everybody. So, I want to speak today from a place that's very personal. In the last couple of months, 2 of my close family members have been diagnosed with cancer, and they're going through the process. And I've been walking alongside one of them very intimately, caring for her. And what I am witnessing has made some things even more clear for me. This matrix construct requires our suffering. It requires our suffering and our consent to stay alive. And nowhere is this clearer than in the medical system. Now, I want to be clear that I am not talking about the people, the human beings who are functioning inside this system. Many of them, from what I can see, are really coming from the right place. They're coming from their hearts. They genuinely care. Not all of them, but most of them. Some of them are downright angelic. And I've been very touched by some of the energies that I've felt from these people who are within the system. And I also want to concede that, in certain areas, modern medicine is really powerful, like in acute care, trauma, emergency surgery. Okay, I am talking about the larger system that we call care. Care. And you notice that the language that the medical system uses is all about care. It's kind of like a word spell. We call it health care, patient care, the standard of care. And these are words that immediately, for most people, will signal safety and benevolence and support. But when you're inside the system, and I think probably anybody who has been inside the system can attest to this, you begin to notice that much of what is happening is not relational care. It is procedural management and transaction. The language that they use creates the feeling that you're being held, that you're being cared for, but you're actually being processed in the system. Terms like your care team, your treatment plan, the protocol can maybe soften the experience and make it feel supportive, but it's quietly guiding you into compliance, which is what it's designed to do. Compliance and extraction of your energy, which is what it's designed to do. It's not that those words are wrong, it's that they can obscure what's actually happening, and in doing so they can distance us from our own direct knowing and of our body, and also what care really is and feels like. This is part of the normalization of inversion in our world. I keep having this image of a metal hand, that like a robotic hand that is covered in human flesh, right? And the deeper you go, the more that you feel the difference between the living touch of the humans in the system and the system itself that is moving through it, moving the hand. Now, as I said, and I want to reiterate, I do believe that there are, based on my experience so far, lots of very caring individuals working as providers within the system. And thank goodness those people are there. But they're often so weighed down by bureaucracy and administrative concerns and other pressures from the system that the system consumes their humanity and diminishes them somehow. Makes it harder for them to show up fully human. But yeah, let's be clear that there is a difference between the human beings inside the system and the system itself. And this is one of the things that I've really been learning and observing as I move through this labyrinth with my family members. Because the same doctor who may care deeply, for example, is also operating inside of protocols and timelines and pressures that are shaping what care finally looks like. So I'm going to share with you, these are kind of snatches from my experience so far, and what they point to. Very early on, in the case of one of my family members, there was a clear push toward a second surgery. My immediate visceral reaction was that was barbaric, and I recoiled from the idea that having just recovered from one surgery, that a second major surgery entailing major recovery, especially for a person of advancing age, was being recommended like it was no big deal. On the off chance that some cancer cells could have escaped into nearby tissues, especially when there are so many gentle, benevolent, complementary options that exist when the stage of dis-ease is not that advanced. But we were processed through the system with a recommendation, a referral, a timeline. And, now after the experience, I wonder that if, had my family member known that what this would really entail, if they might have chosen differently at the outset, which raises an important question, which is how fully informed are we when we're making these decisions? And how, we can't see what's coming. We're being told, this is the standard of care. This is just what we do. The artificial construct that has been overlaid onto us, onto humanity, onto this planet, which is part of the matrix of control, this construct, which has been with us for so long, we don't know anything else. We don't remember anything else. This parasitical consciousness of empire aims to reduce and eventually eliminate, if they could have their way, which they won't, our humanity. And I have observed this in the context of moving through this medical system with my loved ones. You start to notice things, small things that actually add up to a big deal. Like, the barcoded hospital bracelet that they scan. A human being scanned. Yes, I hear you saying, well, but that's the computer recognizes and it's their medical history and all. Yeah. I know, I get it. It's efficient. But also tells you something about how the system is structured and how it views us. I'm not talking about people. I'm talking about the consciousness the consciousness that inhabits this system and all of our systems in this construct. Then there's the financial frame. Another thing that is easy to notice when you start spending time in hospital environments. Before anything happens, there are forms, right? There are cards, there are agreements, there are signatures, there are promises to pay. Even in moments of vulnerability, such as I have seen and witnessed and been part of, the financial structure comes first. It's part of how the system operates. Yes, but it shapes the experience in a very real way. And what strikes me is not just that it exists, but how normal it feels to everyone involved. We are so deeply conditioned that we don't even question it. We just hand over our cards, we pay these insane insurance premiums, we sign what we're given, we accept costs that, if we really stop to think about them, it would shock us. And yet we say, well, it's just how it works. Well, this offends my immortal soul. I recoil from it. And it should offend all human beings. It should offend our immortal soul. It's not about paying for support or expertise. I mean, I'm okay with that, but from the feeling that care itself is contingent on financial clearance. There's something in us, something very deep that knows that this is not how care was meant to be. This is not what it is. And again, this is not about blaming individuals. Everyone inside the system is navigating the same structure. And I'm certainly not the first person to talk about this, but it's on my mind because I'm right in the thick of it right now. The structure itself shapes the experience, and it shapes our expectations. The deeper question here is what it does to us, human beings, over time to internalize the idea that before we can be cared for, we have to first be approved, processed, financially accounted for. What does that teach us about our own worth, about the body, about care itself? And what if the discomfort that we feel, even if we've learned to override it, is actually a sign that something deeper in us remembers a different way of doing this. There is such a huge disconnect from the body in a system that is treating the body constantly. It's blowing my mind. After major surgery, when the body is trying to heal, the food that was offered was heavy, processed, difficult to digest. And you start to wonder, is this system actually aligned with how the body heals? Does anyone in here know how much life force energy is consumed by digestion? The energy that should be directed towards healing? Does anyone in here remember that our body has to eliminate? That in the old days you couldn't be discharged from a hospital until you pooped? Because that was not what I observed. What I witnessed most clearly was entry into, well, you're already inside it, but I could really see the loop, right? You discharged quickly, no bowel movement, no clear pain management strategy, no context given, conflicting instructions within the discharge report, the instructions, unreachable surgeon, unreachable surgical team, emergency escalation. It required an emergency room visit the same day as discharge because of severe extreme pain, and new prescriptions that happened somewhere in the ether and were never communicated. Logistical breakdown. I mean, when you're coming out of a major situation like that and you're dealing with that kind of disconnection, fragmentation, forget about it. I don't know how people do it who don't have somebody accompanying them. I mean, I had to get schooled right away, figure this out, because clearly we were not receiving adequate support. At every step we were on the back foot at first, reacting, trying to catch up, trying to get ahead of pain, trying to get basic information. And, in that moment, you don't feel held. You don't feel cared for. You feel processed. If you're noticed at all. And then comes this cascade of medication, right? The pain meds, the heavy narcotics, the anesthesia from the surgery, and then the heavy pain meds afterwards, which suppress the breathing and slow down the digestion to a standstill and dehydrate the body. And then, your body gets into a condition where more meds are necessary to counter the side effects, and it create more imbalances in the body. The body has to recover from all of that when it's trying to heal from a major violation, and then that requires more interventions down the line. I mean, each layer is trying to correct the effects of the previous one. I'm certainly not the first person to make these observations, but come on. Come on. How much longer are we willing to put up with this madness when every commercial on network television is for a prescription medicine whose ludicrously long list of side effects often include death and or cause the very condition that they are meant to be curing? It is complete insanity. And so I've been finding myself asking over and over, how long are we going to stand for this? It brings me back to the spiritual overlay in all of this, which is suffering as a belief. None of this would be possible without a belief in suffering that has been programmed into us. This moment in the hospital that stayed with me, I passed by a chapel. Nice little chapel, nicely lit, non-denominational, quiet, respectful little chapel. The kind of thing that in the old days I would have been like, oh, that's nice. Well, instead of feeling that, I felt something else entirely. A quiet kind of righteous anger, which I will confess I have felt a lot since I entered this experience. And something in me asked very clearly, why are we still relating to care, to healing, to life itself as something that must be granted from outside of us? How long are we gonna endure that? There's a very old idea that's woven into all of our systems, not just medicine, but spirituality too, that we are inherently flawed, that we must atone, that suffering is necessary, that healing must be earned. And that somehow, in order to be restored and made whole, we must first endure, pay. That's why you pay first when you come to the hospital or the doctor's office. And when you begin to look at it closely, you see how this belief just shows up in the way that care is structured, right? There's these invasive interventions, there's the endurance of pain, and I have seen my loved one suffer from unimaginable pain in the last several days that I have been caring for her. This long process of recovery and this kind of resignation to suffering is become normalized and expected. Like it's just what you do. But, standing there again, looking at that chapel, it just didn't, something to me didn't resonate with it at all anymore. It felt really hollow. It felt like a set. It felt like something that looks like comfort. It looks like care, but it actually doesn't even touch the reality of the experience or the truth of who we are. And the question that keeps coming up for me over and over again as I go through this experience is, how much longer are we going to believe that we have to suffer? That we have to suffer in order to be whole. That is an old belief. It may have been true for eons of time on a certain level, But this is coming to an end. We need to put an end to it now. That is the matrix requires us to suffer. That is how it extracts energy. Loosh, we've been talking about this, right? And I had such a clear sense of that. I've had such a clear sense of that in the last few days, especially, that my loved one was being extracted through her suffering. I'll tell you what, it awakens the warrior in me. It's not right. What if healing is not something that requires suffering, but something that happens naturally when we come back into right relationship with the intelligence of life, the natural world, the natural way of life, of love, of light? Healing happens naturally in those conditions. Care is not something that we earn through endurance or fighting for it. It's something that's available when we just remember who we are. It comes from inside us. Through this experience, it's obvious to me that the system is really good at intervention and not so good at support. That's putting it mildly. There's a big difference. Support would look like continuity, communication, follow-up, presence, context, listening. Now, again, I'm not saying that we didn't experience those qualities from some of the people in the system, but not in any kind of continuous continuity kind of way. All of that is left to the family, or not available at all for those who don't have family there to care for them. And I want to say that I'm more than happy I'm so grateful that I get to be there for my loved one. So grateful to be the one who can provide care, because the system that claims to provide it does not provide it. And I want to name this pattern without blaming any people inside the system, because I don't believe that it comes from malicious individuals. It is a pattern of fragmentation, of disconnection, of procedural flow over human experience, of management of units, of financial units in a system that has nothing to do with the restoration of wholeness. Health means wholeness. That's the origin of that word. A friend of mine told me about a friend of hers who was a doctor at a major hospital on the other side of the world, who was attempting to think outside the box to care for a patient, was called into hospital administration and reprimanded and said, "You are not here to care for the patient. You are here to make money for the hospital." That's the truth. She left. Good on her. So it's a system, that moves you through its loops, but does not necessarily resolve. I would say that most people find their health again in spite of the system, not because of it. And what this is awakening in me is not just frustration, not just righteous anger, which I think are appropriate in the given circumstances, and I do not apologize for them. But what it has awakened is like an even deeper clarity, an even deeper seeing into what I already know to be the truth, which is we cannot outsource our relationship with our own body. And we are not here to suffer. We have suffered enough. And the only way we put an end to that is to decide that we are done with it. We're done with suffering, right? I always quote George Kavasilis' great mantra, I'm a creator being. I'm done suffering. I only want what's real. If you say that to yourself and you really mean it, you know that you're a creator being. You know that you are at the center of creation, of your reality. If you have decided that you are done suffering and you only want what's real, well, that's a very powerful way to move through the world. So, as I've been sitting with all of this and caring for my family member day and night through this experience, this is the thread that keeps, rising up to the surface again and again. This belief that suffering is necessary, that in order to heal, we've got to endure, we've got to go through pain. And when you begin to see it, you realize how deeply it's woven into so many layers of our lives, in medicine, in spirituality, in how we relate to our bodies, in how we relate to challenge in general. That somehow pain is the path, and the difficulty is proof that we're doing it right. But what if that is not actually true? What if that is just so baked into us that we haven't questioned it? Well, I'm encouraging you to question it. Feel into it and see if you want to live that way, because I don't. And after witnessing what I've been witnessing, it is ever more clear to me. I'm going to make a different choice continually. That belief in suffering is the very thing that keeps us accepting experiences that are not aligned, that are not supportive, that don't feel like care. We humans know what real care feels like. Its presence, its gentleness, its clarity, its attunement. That's what care is. That's what human beings can provide for one another. And that's what many human beings are trying to provide for one another in spite of that system that they are part of. And again, I want to just emphasize that there have been real moments of flashes of light with people within that system who were doing their best to care. But all it did was starkly expose the truth about the system itself, how broken it is and how it needs to be rethought. Why do we stay in this abusive relationship with the construct? Well, a couple of months back, I did one of these lives on the topic of breaking up with the psychopath. Breaking up with the psychopath, that exiting the matrix is like breaking up with a psychopath in your life. The only way that we can remain in any system that doesn't serve us is if we believe at some level that that's what, that's just the way it is, that we're obliged to, that, in this case, that's what healing requires, that's all we can hope for or all we deserve. That is the root belief, right? We stay in this abusive relationship because we are inherently trusting and innocent. That is what is so beautiful about human beings, is that we have a heart. We're source-connected beings. No matter how much distortion has come into the picture, when we remember our humanity, it's here, it's right here. It's the heart. Something presents as caring, we trust it. We've had a hard time seeing the wolf in sheep's clothing, and it's friggin' everywhere. So something presents as caring, something asks for trust or surrender, something overrides our inner knowing, something normalizes harm, normalizes inversion, and we stay because we've been conditioned to believe that it's necessary. Well, it isn't necessary. And what if healing is not something that we earn through suffering? I'll say it once again, but something that just unfolds naturally when we come back into the right relationship with life itself. So I leave you with this question. How much longer are you willing to suffer? How much longer are you willing to believe that suffering is required in life? I'm not saying that we don't have difficult experiences, that we don't have challenges, but suffering is a whole other level of loosable energy that feeds the system. It's required to keep the system alive. Therefore, we have to comply with it. That is how we keep the system alive, by believing that suffering is necessary, by allowing ourselves to be extracted by it. And another question that we can ask is, what becomes possible when we no longer allow that? When we make a decision, you know what, I'm done suffering. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to participate in any system that extracts from me. And if I don't know how to get out, I'm going to work on getting out with integrity, from a centered place, from a grounded place, not from a reactive place. Thank you. We don't question the system because we've been taught that we must suffer. That doesn't serve us. It only serves the system. So, let's break free. Suffering is optional. Well, I genuinely hope that this message has been helpful, especially if you or someone you love is going through a similar experience. I know a lot of people are right now. I hope it offers a grounded perspective. It's up to us to change all of this. And we change it from the inside out, from one person at a time. It's our decision whether we consent and participate in the perpetuation of the construct through belief in suffering. Thank you. See you guys again next week.